Namaste. So, first about the three terms Jivatma, Atma, Paramatma. Because this talk is in English, we'll take it in that context. So, we know that every element has a spark of divinity within it. That's how all Indic born religions have described God. There are religions which do not believe in the immanence of divine. They believe that whatever exists, creation is a fall and fall alone. But in Indic religion, which means, of course, Sanatana Dharma and all that has come out of Sanatana Dharma, takes it not as a belief but as a fact of experience that there is the divine presence in each element of creation. In human beings, there is the possibility to become conscious of this divine element. So, this is as far as the individual elements are concerned. What about the cosmos? Because we exist in a larger cosmic context, we are not just alone. And cosmos is not just this material creation or humanity, but it includes a many tired world. So there is this second element of the divine, aspect of the divine, which is called as cosmic divine or the universal divine. So there is the individual divine in every element of creation as a spark, but in human beings, it becomes possible to find him, discover him, and unite with him. But there is also the cosmic divine, which upholds the entire cosmic movement in space and time. So, this is the second aspect. But is that all? So, there is the third aspect, which is the transcendental, which transcends these. And if you look at the creation, it becomes very logical to understand this. There is the divine before the cosmos and before individualities are born in it. So, out of him, cosmos emerges. So, there is in him that transcendental aspect, which is the original, which is before cosmos is born. It transcends the creation, transcends cosmos. And then in this cosmos we have Brahman, we have several creatures, things, objects, stars, rivers, mountains upon earth. All these individual elements come, Jagatyam Jagat, and in each of them there is the individual divine. This is the first thing to understand, that there is the triple status of the one divine, the transcendent, the cosmic, and the individual. So, where does the Jivatma and Paramatma figure in it? Paramatma is the Paramatma. He is the source of all. He is the transcendent divine. So, that's why he is Param, beyond everything. Paramatma. So, out of him, we see that there is the cosmic spirit which comes into existence, and that is what is generally called as Atma. Atma in the real sense, not the way we use Atma in films and horror movies. Atma. Atma is the cosmic spirit, the spirit which contains everything within itself. So it's the consciousness, power, and energy of the Lord which holds the whole cosmos, conducts its affairs through the dual principle of knowledge and ignorance. So there is the cosmic knowledge as well as cosmic ignorance. And it uses both for its purposes. So there is the cosmic spirit called Atma. If we have to use another prevalent terminology in Indian thought, we use the word Brahman. So there is the Paramatma, Parameshwar. And then there is the Brahman. And then the cosmic divine enters into every individual principle, and that is where the word Jivatma comes in. So again we zoom in and put it more in perspective. So the transcendent, before time and space is created, wants to become many, and out of him many Jivatmas emerge, and of course the cosmic spirit emerge. So there is a point before time and space when all three exist together. The Paramatma, the Atma or Brahman, as well as the Jivatma. So in the Gita, they are described as one is Sharobha, when the divine enters into the mutable world. And then there is the Akshar Brahma, and then there is the Purushottama. But the Gita speaks of the Jivatma as Para Prakriti, Jivbhuta. That's where it is born. So our Jivatma is the Jiva's individual soul. Is we can't use the word born because there is no time there. So it emerges out of the Paramatma and has the same essence as the Paramatma. But the difference is that because the infinite wants to manifest through infinite number of Jivatma, something or the other, so each Jivatma picks up one aspect, one line, and says, okay, I will express this. So Yudhishthir, for example, if we take it, becomes the spear throw, and Arjuna becomes the sharpshooter, arrow, etc. etc. And Bhima is Gadadhar. They could have picked up any of them, but it's like each Jivatma is born to express some aspect of the other of the divine, infinite divine. That's how the play starts. But now the play has to take place in time and space. So out of Brahman, the cosmic spirit, there is born time and space. How it is born? The Brahman consciousness starts extending itself. And it can extend itself because it's in a sense infinite. It can extend itself endlessly. So space is born. And when the energy within it enters into motion, then time is born. So space and time are created. Now, Paramatma, the Brahman consciousness, as well as the Jivatma, they are above time and space. But out of Brahman, time and space emerge, where the play has to begin. And who has to enter the play? Everybody will enter into the play. Paramatma as well as Jivatma. But Jivatma is the basis through which, because he is to express something or the other of the divine. This Jivatma, while all the time remaining above, sends something of itself into the mutable play. Like the ray from the sun entering into the play. Jivatma is not bound by time and place. In Sri Aurobindo's terminology is called as the central being. So this central being enters into the play not directly, but something of itself it sends into the play. This something is like a spark of that fire. So if we take the Paramatma as the sun, then each Jivatma is like a fire, and it sends some sparks of it into the cosmic plane, into time and space. These sparks enter the mutable world and seem to die when the frame dies. They assume the frame of body, life and mind. But it is indestructible and it is immortal. So what happens? In the course of journey, this little spark begins to grow into a flame. It gathers experience and grows. That's its nature. So this part of the Jivatma, which enters into the play, is called as the psychic principle or the soul in human being. This is an evolutionary principle. Jivatma doesn't evolve. Carries the original blueprint that this particular Jivatma is going to manifest love or going to manifest wisdom. And there would be many, many shades of it. So what happens is that it sends a psychic being, or not the psychic being, a spark into the play called as an individual soul. Now, if it has to manifest knowledge, how will it grow into knowledge? Through error. By its very logic, it has to grow through error. There's no other way. So through error, it will grow towards knowledge. Because error is the first step towards knowledge. That's all. It is right now buried inside nature's ignorance, in the lower nature. This little spark comes. And it proceeds from ignorance towards knowledge, proceeds from darkness towards light. So every life, of all the experiences that it receives from the world through contact with the world, it absorbs that much which is necessary for it to grow. It's like a spark which feeds upon all the events and circumstances of life and grows into a fire. And that we can take a very simple example. That ordinarily life goes very dull and people say, oh, it's meaningless, boring, and even people can't, do much work. And suddenly there is a crisis. So what happens during the crisis? We are filled up with some kind of an enthusiasm to do something. We are facing a challenge. So, if we were to put it figuratively, we would say, well, inside, something grew like a fire to face the challenge. It could take place in many ways. That's why sometimes when people fall in love, it's called flame. Suddenly there is an awakening out of the dull, barren life, or there is a sudden insight about knowledge. Suddenly there is a kind of knowledge which leaps from within. So through all let's say there is a challenge and one doesn't know how to deal with it. So what happens over a period of time? This is the original education method of nature. Knowledge will leap up from within to face the challenge, and we grow in knowledge. So where is this knowledge embedded? In the same spark, immortal soul. That's why Sri Aurobindo, when he says in education, he says first principle is nothing can be taught. All knowledge is within, and the purpose of the teacher is to educe it, because that's how nature works. And how does nature work? From near to far. It doesn't hammer knowledge into. So that's exactly how the individual soul grows. There is a challenge, it grows. Challenge grows. So in one life, if there are not many challenges, it means little growth. If there are plenty of challenges, it means tremendous growth. So when we understand this logic, we start looking at things very differently. A life full of challenges is a life full of opportunities. But that's an aside. Now this individual soul grows from life to life, from birth to birth. It does not perish with the perishing of the bodily frame. And there comes a time when it is ready to be fully developed. It is developed to a point where now it is ready to manifest that aspect which originally it is meant to express. So what happens at that point of time? This individual soul develops into a psychic being. Then comes the being. Before that there is no being. It is all nebulous. And this psychic being, a little step further, fuses with the central being, with the Jivatma. Now it is connected with something beyond time and space. Now it has the original transcript, blueprint. That time it knows what is its purpose, what it is born to manifest. Until then, its journey is totally in ignorance. And when it is able to manifest that, it is one of the two options. One is it can extend itself, widen, and become one with the Atma, Brahman, because they are all one, but different expressions of that. Or it can enter into the transcendent Paramatma and have lay, done with birth and death. All these possibilities are there. When it enters into a status of oneness with the cosmic divine, it can reside on one of the great higher planes, or it can receive a being, a god from one of these higher planes, and that god incarnates in such a developed psychic being and uses it for its own purposes in the cosmic play. And if it enters into lay with the transcendent, then it's a different story altogether. It passes out of manifestation. Or it can stand on the borders, knows the transcendent because it is joined with the psychic being, with the central being, that is Jivatma. Jivatma is always in the company of Paramatma. It has no problem at all. And therefore, while being in the company of the Paramatma, yet it takes part in the play, but very consciously. So these are the options. So we have the individual soul which enters into evolution. Individual soul is nothing but a ray sent from Jivatma, which is beyond time and space. So this individual soul, we can use any term, but normally people use the word Jivatma. But Jivatma in its origin is always beyond time and place. So that's why this distinction Sri Aurobindo makes. The Jivatma, the central being, is always beyond time and space. That's what is shown by the image of the two birds. But it watches over that individual spark, which has to develop and one day reproduce the original purpose for which this Jivatma exists. So it watches over this individual soul and its development like a guardian angel. Each of us is a guardian angel. And each of us is also allotted a shadow. Now this is going a little further. One who opposes this grand plan. So if knowledge has to manifest itself, this Mr. Shadow will keep on doing things which will like error. But was it its purpose? Its purpose is to perfect the knowledge. That's why at one place Sri Aurobindo says, both love and death conspire towards one great end. So he is also allotted from birth. And the more we develop, the greater the shadow. Because now the challenge becomes higher and higher. That's why you will see that people who develop more and more, they have to face a much greater challenge, burden of the cross, if one may put it. Tremendous doubts, because now he has to manifest something higher. So he has to go through all those doubts, resolve them, find a harmony, synthesis. Otherwise, when somebody is not to manifest this higher knowledge, then what happens? Somebody said, no, I believe because I have read somewhere, and that's the end of the story. It's not true knowledge. But somebody who has to manifest knowledge will face the challenge of scientific materialism, this, that, everything. Once he goes through it, he will be, all this knowledge will leap from within and harmonize and synthesize. We see in Sri Aurobindo's life the challenges. So the greater the soul develops, this shadow comes. So on one side there is the Jivatma always receiving help from the Paramatma, is conscious of the Paramatma. On the other side is the shadow, because and the soul stands somewhere in between. It is emerging out of the shadow, out of the inconscient it's emerging and ascending upward. That's why Sri Aurobindo says the soul of man is a world full of beings and battles where armies collide and gods help and asuras hamper the progress. And it has to be so, because if this were not so, then there would be no real progress. So on one side, the original plan and the Paramatma. The closer we come towards higher and higher ranges, we become more and more conscious of the Paramatma. At the same time, we face greater and greater challenges. Because it's the last bit. The inconscient tries everything now. It says, I won't let you free. So it sends its last, most deadliest enemies. That's why we see in the story of Krishna, there's the story of the development of the soul in man. That initially he just put a little cage and all those fellows sleep off and he vanishes. But as he grows up, the level of difficulty rises higher and higher till he is face to face with none else but Kansa. So that is the process of growth. The last stronghold, Asura, of Asura in man is the ego self. Last stronghold. So then this Asura tries everything to harden it, stiffen it, not to allow the soul to escape. But then it's the inevitable destiny of the soul, because it's always held by the Jivatma outside time and space. It knows what's happening. It knows how to pull the ropes, and Paramatma is there right by his side. So eventual victory is certain, but this is the path it takes. So we have the individual soul, which is a spark of the divine, which develops into the Chaitya Satta or the psychic being. We have the cosmic divine, Atma, Brahman, and the cosmic being. And then we have finally the Purushottama, Paramatma, the Transcendent. The new thing that Sri Aurobindo brings is, which is left ambiguous in spiritual literature, is that Jivatma has two modes of functioning. One is, in its origin, it's beyond time and space. That's why in Savitri there is a description when the queen says, why the God is inflicting all this on my daughter. And then there is a beautiful passage, once in the vigil of a deathless gaze, the soul decided, attracted by the night, it decided to plunge. Once in the vigil. If there is a passage, we can probably read it. So, its origin is before time and space. But the moment time and space are created and there is involution and there is the inconscient. So the soul says, wow, that's something which I would want to go. It's all inspired by the Lord. So it just looks at the Lord and says, are you sure? And the divine says, yes, I'll come along with you. Okay, let's play this game of games. The dangerous game. So the moment it enters into the inconscient, it becomes a captive. But this is the game. In the process, what it is doing? It is redeeming nature. The lower nature, which is because of involution, the higher supernature, Paraprakriti, has become Aparaprakriti. Now this representative of the divine, the psychic element or the spark has entered into this Aparaprakriti. But because it is there, it will always be attracted toward the divine. Come what may, you may keep it in the densest darkness. It will always be attracted, and therefore there will always be this constant growth. That's why the cosmic divine is called as Krishna, one who attracts. It just can't help it. It's like a magnet. It has come from there. And it is attracted. But as it is attracted, Prakriti clings, the lower nature clings to him. I won't let you go, I won't let you go. So divine says, okay, you come along. That's how the lower nature starts getting upgraded. From tamas to rajas to sattva to higher grades to ultimately, one day it will be the higher supernature. This is the process. That's why it came in here. So that all these lower planes can also be upgraded. So these are the lines. No, this is not the one. This is once in the vigil of a deathless case. I know this is a problem with incarnate word. It gives too many options. In Sadhani, that's okay. So in Savitri, you have these lines. Once in the vigil of a deathless case, the souls took plunge into the night. This is the adventure of consciousness and joy. And in all this, because the Anandamaya is there with us, Soma plunges, all the gods plunge. Why does Soma plunge? He says, okay, through all this adventure, I'll give him little quota of joy. Even in the post-fallen state, the soul within man and the man in the frontal personality is obviously the ego construct of nature. It dissolves with each life. Behind it is the inner being, and behind it is the inmost soul. So, this outer being finds its quota of joy, even in the most fallen state. Because Soma, even at that stage, is there, though completely distorted. It will find something or the other through which it will progress. A thief will find a means to escape the police and thereby progress. Some kind of intelligence will develop. So, this is how it's a slow progress. In yoga, this progress becomes conscious. So, this is the process, and we'll just read these lines. Yes. Arisen from the unspoken truth in things, have fixed our inner life's slow scaled degrees. The spark plunges into matter, then living beings, then mentalized being. At mentalized beings, it begins to get little more formed and crystallized. From the deep adventure of material birth, a ladder of delivering ascent and rungs that nature climbs in deity. Once in the vigil of a deathless gaze. Deathless gaze, when they could see, there is no death there. Once in the vigil of a deathless gaze, these greats had marked her giant downward plunge, the wide and prone leap of a Godhead's fall. So they entered into it, and why? For not just going back to the same status. They recover this lower nature, and in the process, they become the little spark becomes a Godhead in its own right. And along with them plunges the Divine Mother, and of course, the Divine is here. So this is the game of games that we are here to play. If there is any question on this, we can just take it. Yeah.
So each psychic being is unique, right?
Yes.
We have unique Jivatma connected with each psychic.
Yes. So psychic being is when the soul, individual soul, develops over a period of time and becomes a being. Before that, it's not yet a being, but it will develop into a psychic being. That's true. Now, each of them, though, has the same essence as the divine, yet is meant to manifest some aspect or the other. That's how the Svabhava and Swadharma comes in. That script is with the Jivatma, that this is what it is meant. So in that sense, it is unique. So we can use the word like water, same water, put in different pots, and or the same gold. You carve a nice kangan out of it, or you make a crown out of it. So it in its essence, it is same as the divine. And that's why it can easily, through the psychic being, we can easily enter into the universal consciousness. And that is the right door. Otherwise, we can enter into cosmic ignorance and there will be total confusion and chaos. So, through the soul, we can enter into the cosmic consciousness, the cosmic spirit, become one with it, understand the truth of each one, know that each one represents some aspect or the other of the divine, even in the cloak of ignorance. The real experience will be a person who has realized the soul automatically helps others to realize it, and because he has discovered this element within, easily discovers that element in others. So, how is the relation now? Not to the surface personality. He may play with the surface personality according to the rules of the game, but he knows that deep within there is something or the other of the divine. It can easily pick up that divine element. Somebody, for instance, is angry and shouting at you. So, a person who is conscious of the soul can see that there is some truth in that. One will see that and will pick up that element, hold on to that element. With somebody else, one may see that there is the element of beauty and harmony inside. With third person, one can see is the warrior soul. It has come with a sword to kill me, thinking I am an enemy. But it's that soul which is inside, which fights at perceived injustice. That perception is completely wrong. But it believes it's a perceived injustice and wants to push. But deep inside, one can experience that divine element. And so the relation changes completely. It will never be one of hatred, anger to anger, jealousy. All this will go away. So this is how the perception changes. So while it understands the divine element, but it knows that each one has his own unique mode of manifestation. It knows that I have to play the role of knowledge, wisdom. The other person has to play the role of a warrior. So it's okay. So that's how it is.
How do the concepts of nirvana and moksha harmonize with this?
Yes, nirvana and moksha. So
With this
yes, so that's what in this context, in this scheme of things. So moksha, I'll say, moksha is a state when the soul has freed itself from ignorance. What is meant by that is initially it is identified with the ignorance and has forgotten itself. It thinks it is this surface nature. And it is necessary initially for the nature to drag it. And behind this surface nature or the lower nature, there is the higher nature in any case. So it pushes and lower nature drags the soul, which is like a little spark lying in the cradle. It doesn't know who it is. It is fed by Putana, it takes it. It is fed by Yashodama, it takes it. It takes everything that is given to it as food. It doesn't even know it cries. So it is identified completely. It's like when we are children, we are totally identified with the parental home. That is ignorance. I mean, in that sense. But when we grow up, we discover, no. I'm giving an example. No. There is an identity of mind which is independent of my parental home. So what happens at that point of time? Does the soul discard the parental this thing? No, it doesn't need to. It has discovered itself. Now it need not discard. It understands. It can work better. But there are some people who forever will continue to be their surname. So a soul in ignorance is a soul which doesn't know itself. It's completely identified with nature. It thinks I am the body. It thinks I am my thoughts. It thinks I am my feelings. But a soul which is freed from ignorance knows this is just my outer personality given to me for action. This is the instrument. But I am not this. I am separate. So in that sense, when the soul is freed from this ignorance, false identification, then it has moksha. Now, after moksha, it may choose that, okay, I am not none of this. Why should I continue here in this play at all? So it can withdraw completely and enter into laya or nirvana, whatever way we want to put it. There are different terms, means it vanishes completely. It has that option, it has the choice, but not before that. So it can vanish and completely. Or it may choose to be part of the divine work of the Leela. In which case, one of the two things may happen. Usually, some being of the higher worlds takes hold of this soul and he becomes a godhead or an instrument of one of the gods. See, in Trojan War and Mahabharata, we have these great gods riding on one of these beings. Arjuna, Indra supports like that because they are also looking for earthly instruments in the Devasur Sangram. So if you have a developed soul, it can become a wonderful instrument for these gods to express.
Once he is out of ignorance, still the choice is
Then only choice is there. Till ignorance, it's an illusion of choice. In ignorance, it believes that it is doing things. I am choosing, but there is no real choice. Yantra rudini maya. One believes one has choice, but it's an illusion of choice. It's only when it is freed that all these apply, that whether I want to continue, I don't want to continue. Before that, one may say, I want nirvana, but the soul may be laughing. It may say, fool, you are just going through a temporary Shamshan Vairagya. You are not meant for nirvana. You know, that Nalini Das, that 3 times he tried sannyas, but his soul knew he is not meant for that. So he is drawn back. So ignorantly, our outer nature, mind may say several things, but the soul within knows. Generally, most souls, they are born to manifest the divine. That's why they have taken the plunge. In fact, the mother uses the word, and it's also used in other literature also. Even Sri Aurobindo uses the word weak souls who have not developed so much, who have always found a easy door to wriggle out of creation. They seek nirvana. Very few in reality. But most souls, heroic souls or strong souls, they want to manifest. And heroic souls who, being free, enter into the play as a Jivan Mukta to help in the manifestation. So all these possibilities actually arise in the true sense only when the soul is freed from ignorance. This fundamental freedom is the first step. Meaning thereby, I no more identify myself with Dr. So-and-so, my name, surname, all these things, my outer body, my frame, achievements, mental ideas, opinions, viewpoints. Yes, they are there. They can be used as instrument, but they are not me. This realization, when it comes as a concrete fact, then one sign is that one is freed completely from the fear of death. Second is one begins to become aware of different lives. Not like suddenly there is a flash and you were that. It doesn't come like that. But there will be experience which will connect you to some of your past lives. Not like all the 100 lives appear from chimpanzee to man. But certain crucial junctures, they will begin to appear. It may happen through looking at a picture. It may happen suddenly when you are observing a sculpture, or you have gone to a palace and suddenly you will discover those elements of your life which were connected with something or the other. These things will happen. And of course, you are completely conscious of the divine in creation. That's when faith is beyond any. Because you know the divine exists. Even if body is tortured to death, it doesn't matter. Because you are completely conscious. You know that body dies, I am immortal. So this sense of immortality comes with the discovery of the immortal soul. Any other question?
Greater the sadhaka, greater are his difficulties.
Greater the possibility, greater the difficulty. These are words of the mother, and she said, measure by measure, gram by gram. She's used weight. Weight by weight, gram by gram. Now, we have to understand it this way. One is that where a person is living in darkness, he can't say, I am great possibilities, therefore I have great difficulty. He doesn't regard them as difficulties. He is very happy in that state. It's like somebody in a fallen state in the mud, enjoying his quota of drinks, says, I am in bliss, I don't need God and all. That is not called difficulty. That is a fallen state, the beginning state. But difficulty comes when you are trying to ascend. So before we can use the word difficulty, there has to be an aspiration for the ascension. It's only then that you understand it as a difficulty. Otherwise, there is no difficulty. A normal person who is identified, let's say, with greed or lust or fear, doesn't say it's my difficulty. He says, this is me. What can I do? He is angry with me, I'm angry. You lose your cool, I'll lose my cool. If I ever had one, there is no difficulty. He is a fallen state. But when you want to aspire for peace, then you face the challenge of anger. Then you say, what to do? I am trying for peace. But this anger doesn't leave me. That's when this aspect of shadow comes in. Before that, one is identified with the shadow. It's only when we move toward the light that the shadow and light play starts. And we can take it as an image. In dense night, there is no shadow. It's only when the light begins to come, you look up, then the shadow is cast. And when does the shadow disappear? When you reach midday. That's how it is. So you have to keep moving toward the light till the shadow disappears.
What is our true effort from spark to grow the soul?
We should keep on moving towards soul growth by giving it soul food. I mean, see, we give food to the body, nourishment needs. What is food for the body is some material, this thing. There also we have healthy and unhealthy. We give food to the mind, all kinds of information. Again, healthy and unhealthy. We give food to the vital, emotions, through various kinds of contacts, healthy and unhealthy. So also there is food for the soul, healthy and unhealthy. Healthy food for the soul is Vedas, Upanishads, Gita, Shri Aurobindo and the Mother, contemplation, true meditation. These are all healthy food for the soul. Bad food for the soul is Harvard University professor, what is his name? He wrote a book on psychoanalysis of characters in Mahabharata. Very dangerous. With this Putna. And people think we are doing a great thing. That is unhealthy food. It's like a poison to the soul. But then there are people who, because somebody has written on, I don't want to name, it may be, who has written a book on psychoanalytical understanding of Shiva and Parvati. So you may say, oh, it is about Shiva and Parvati. This is not food for the soul. This is poison for the soul. Soul won't die, but that life will be dragged to the abysses. That's why it's so important that the word has power, books have power. That was the whole issue when all these books were coming out. That look, word has power, books have tremendous influence. They outlast an author. And we should be so careful what milk we are giving to our children in the name of liberality. That, oh, Rama was a misogynist and, now there are concepts like that. And you'll say it's about Rama and Sita. Have you seen that movie? What was that name? Mani Ratnam. So, on Rama, portraying Rama as, gun brandishing someone. Now, this is the poison for the psychic being. So, if you go thinking that this is about, a lot of movies come like that and books are written. Primarily, the source comes from Hollywood. Complete misunderstanding of the twist, and it is like a dangerous food for the soul. It may look like, see, Asura's worst weapon is imitation of the divine. Opposition is okay. Imitation of the divine is very, very dangerous. But people who don't know the real stuff, they get very carried away. Oh, there is a film called Avatar. I don't want to say further. All blue body and... Okay, you show something like that, there is in it something aspect of, But actually the original story is totally changed. And that's how, but the term is there. You see how things get distorted. The word avatar, many of these words, guru, they've all been distorted in the context of a computer. Have you noticed? So the Asura is also very active, super active, hyperactive, not super active. But for that reason, the divine also is super active.
And how we know from spark to flame?
From?
Coming from spark to flame.
The closer, the more you grow in the psychic being, the closer you feel to the divine and feel His grace in everything. You feel His grace in every hand, in every circumstance. People may think it is horrible, but the soul which is developed sees His hand in all circumstances. Savitri describes that beautifully in book 7, canto 5, Finding of the Soul. You will feel that this is grace, all is grace. However challenging and difficult. And this is not a way of saying, oh, God's grace, what can... No, no. It is grace. You see it and you even know how it is grace. So that is the difference. So the closer you... the more we grow in the psychic being, the closer we feel the proximity of the divine grace. The other pole is where you, even when grace is manifest, God comes before you, you say, how can He be God? He's got 2 eyes, 1 nose like me. That is the Duryodhana factor. So this is the sign, the real sign, that you feel that closeness to the divine. It has nothing to do with any outer proof. Your outer life may be in shambles. And you will say, Teri talwar ke niche nachiyan karke thaiyan thaiyan. With every drop of blood, I find you. There have been mystics like that.
But it is not continuing. It is sometimes it is we feel.
Yes, so that's where the experience comes and goes. But when you have realized, then this state becomes steady. That is the difference between experiencing soul glimpses. There are moments when you feel that. But then the mind clouds. So that means that there is a partial emergence out of ignorance. Even emergence is not sudden. Moksha is not like today I was in ignorance, suddenly I got awareness, I know my soul. There will be many partial glimpses. Maybe a part of the mind gets liberated, heart does not. Then the heart gets liberated, the life does not. The lower vital does not. The body still holds it back. So when there is a bodily illness, one forgets. So there is a partial experiences, and then they eventually lead to the full emergence. So it's a process. So one is glimpse, then there is a concrete experience, and then there is a realization where you are not just know the soul, you are the soul, identified with it. These are the steps. So we have to keep moving towards that. Call God's name. Soul is bound to come up and it drinks that milk like this. Nothing can resist God's name, because the moment we call God's name, the soul is all awake. See, baby sleeping, what does he respond to? Mama's voice. For sleeping, he responds to mama's voice. For waking up, mama's voice. Any other voice, if he's threatened, startled, all that. So the soul knows the divine voice and the great name, a prayer upon his lips and the great name. Pray, call mother's name, read things which are authentic spiritual, not like kabadi khana spiritual. Novels on that, there's not. Authentic spiritual, Vedas, Upanishads, Gita, Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda's works, of course Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. There are plenty of others. There are genuine books. Read them. You'll see how beautifully the soul emerges and grows. Ramayana, Mahabharata. Okay.